You know that sound when a tectonic plate shifts? That deep, guttural grinding that suggests the earth itself is clearing its throat? That is what my truck sounds like at 6 in the morning. And I love it. I absolutely, unrepentantly love it. It's a 2004 Ford F350 with the legendary 7.3-liter Power-Stroke diesel engine. In the world of trucks, this thing is a dinosaur. A loud, iron block, prehistoric beast that drinks fuel like a frat boy, drinks cheap beer, and produces enough torque to pull a house off its foundation. We call her the Mammoth. She's got 300,000 miles on the odometer, a dent in the rear bumper from a job site in '09, and a soul that just won't quit. But to Mrs. Brenda Halloway, my next-door neighbor and the self-appointed sheriff of the subdivision, the Mammoth isn't a marvel of engineering. It's a personal insult. It's a war crime committed against the beige, silent sanctity of her retirement. It was a Tuesday, a crisp, chilly October morning where you can see your breath hang in the air like fog. The time was exactly 5:58 a.m. I know this because I was staring at the digital watch on my wrist, timing my exit. The bylaws of the Oak Creek Homeowners Association, a document roughly the size of the Old Testament and twice as judgmental, stated that excessive noise was prohibited between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. I was a man of the law. I respected the rules. I was sitting in the driver's seat, coffee in the cup holder, hand hovering over the ignition, waiting for that minute hand to tick over. 5:59 a.m. I looked at the house to my left. Mrs. Halloway's blinds were already open. They were always open. Sometimes I suspected she didn't actually sleep. She just plugged herself into a wall socket and downloaded new ways to be miserable. I could see her silhouette standing there, rigid, like a gargoyle in a floral bathrobe. She was waiting for me. She knew the routine. Every morning I leave for the job site. Every morning she watches me like a hawk scanning for a field mouse. 6 a.m., showtime. I turned the key halfway. The dashboard lit up, the amber wait to start coil glowing warmly. You have to treat a 7.3 with respect when it's cold. You have to let the glow plugs warm the cylinders, or she'll just crank and crank like a grumpy teenager refusing to get out of bed. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. The light clicked off. I turned the key the rest of the way. Chug, 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 kaboom. The Mammoth roared to life. It wasn't a purr. It was a clatter. A rhythmic, metallic hammering that resonated in your chest cavity. Clack, 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 clack. The truck shook slightly, the vibration traveling up through the seat and into my spine. It was the sound of productivity. It was the sound of America. It was the sound of a working man going to earn a living. And apparently, it was the sound of the apocalypse. Before I could even put the truck in reverse, I saw the front door of the house next door fly open. It didn't open, it exploded outward. Mrs. Halloway marched down her walkway, the belt of her bathrobe cinched so tight I was surprised she didn't pass out. She was wielding a smartphone in one hand like a holy relic, the screen glowing against the dim morning light. I sighed, rolling down the window. The cold air rushed in, mixing with the smell of unburnt diesel fuel, a scent I happened to enjoy, though I knew it was an acquired taste. It smelled like raw power. "Good morning, Brenda," I shouted over the idle of the engine. I tried to be cheerful. I really did. Kill them with kindness, my dad used to say. Although in Brenda's case, I think she was immune to kindness, like a cockroach is immune to radiation. "Turn it off!" she shrieked. She was standing at the edge of my driveway now, dangerously close to the exhaust pipe. "Turn that infernal machine off right now, Michael." "Can't do that, Brenda," I yelled back, leaning an arm out the window. "Gotta let her warm up. Fluids need to circulate, you know how it is." She marched right up to the driver's side door, thrusting her phone into my face. I recoiled slightly. On the screen was a decibel meter app. Sure boy. The numbers were bouncing erratically between 80 and 90. "Look at this!" she screamed, pointing a manicured finger at the screen. 90 decibels, 90! Do you know what the acceptable limit for residential noise is? Do you? "I'm guessing you're about to tell me," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "It is 55, she yelled. 55. You are assaulting my eardrums. You are vibrating my china cabinet. Mr. Mittens is hiding under the sofa because he thinks we're being bombed. Mr. Mittens is a nervous cat, Brenda. A strong breeze makes him hide under the sofa. Don't you dare bring my cat into this! This is about you and this monstrosity! She gestured wildly at the truck. It's pollution. It's noise pollution. It's air pollution. Look at that smoke! I glanced in the side mirror. Okay, to be fair, on a cold start, the Mammoth did puff a little bit of white smoke. It was just condensation and a rich fuel mixture until the cylinders heated up. It wasn't black smoke. I wasn't one of those guys who rolled coal just to be a jerk. This was just an old engine waking up. It clears up in 2 minutes, I said reasonably. I just need to let it idle for a bit, and then I'm gone. I'm just trying to get to work. Work? She scoffed, clutching her robe. You call this work? Driving around in a tank destroying the ozone layer? It smells like a chemical factory out here. I can taste it. I can taste the toxins on my tongue, Michael. I have asthma. I have delicate lungs. Brenda did not have delicate lungs. I had heard her scream at a FedEx driver from 3 blocks away because he parked on the wrong side of the street. Lindor. She had the lung capacity of an opera singer and the temperament of a badger. It's just diesel, Brenda. It's the same stuff the school buses run on. School buses don't park 10 feet from my bedroom window at the crack of dawn, she countered. I have rights. I have the right to peaceful enjoyment of my property. This is harassment. You are doing this on purpose. I am literally just sitting in my driveway, I said, my patience starting to fray like an old rope. I have to get to the job site in Jersey by 8. This is my vehicle. It's registered, it's inspected, and it's parked on my property. It's a commercial vehicle, she declared, playing her favorite card. HOA rules state no commercial vehicles in driveways overnight. It's not a commercial vehicle, I corrected her, tapping the steering wheel. It's a personal truck. No logos on the side. No ladder rack, just a pickup truck. We've been over this with the board 3 times, Brenda. I won. Remember? Her face turned a shade of red that was visible even in the twilight. She remembered. Oh, she remembered. The great truck. Hearing of last November was legendary. She had brought charts. I had brought the title and registration proving it was a personal vehicle. The board, terrified of her but bound by the actual rules, had sided with me. She had never forgiven me for that victory. The board made a mistake, she hissed. But the city won't. I'm recording this, Michael. I'm sending this to code enforcement. I'm sending this to the EPA. I'm sending this to the mayor. You send it to the Pope if you want, Brenda. I gotta go. I shifted into reverse. The transmission clunked into gear, a solid, heavy sound. Don't you move this vehicle while I am standing here, she commanded, putting a hand on the door handle as if she could physically restrain an 8,000-pound truck. Brenda, step away from the truck, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I'm backing out. I am a pedestrian. I have the right of way. You are standing in my driveway. I am gathering evidence. I eased my foot off the brake. The truck crept backward an inch. She gasped and jumped back as if I had tried to run her over at high speed. Assault! She screamed. Vehicular assault! I got that on camera. You tried to hit me. I moved an inch. Brenda, get a grip. I kept backing up. Slowly, carefully. She followed me down the driveway, still filming, still screaming. As the front of the truck cleared the garage, the exhaust pipe angled slightly toward where she was standing. I didn't rev the engine. I swear on my mother's grave I didn't rev it. But as I transitioned from the driveway to the street, I had to give it a little gas to get over the curb lip. Vroom. A puff of gray exhaust drifted out. It wasn't a cloud. It was a puff. A mere wisp. But Brenda acted like I had just deployed mustard gas in the trenches of Wadoduwan. She waved her hands frantically in front of her face, coughing theatrically. Cough, cough. Oh God, the fumes! You're killing me. You're killing an old woman. I put the truck in drive. I looked at her one last time through the passenger window. She was standing in the middle of the street now, bathrobe flapping in the wind, phone raised high, coughing like she was in the final stages of consumption. Have a nice day, Mrs. "Halloway!" I called out. I tapped the accelerator, and the Mammoth rumbled down the street, the turbo starting to whistle that sweet, high-pitched song as I picked up speed. I watched her in the rearview mirror until she was just a small, angry floral dot. I shook my head, taking a long pull of my coffee. I thought that was the end of it. Just another morning skirmish in the ongoing Cold War of suburban living. I thought she would go inside, write a furious email to the property manager, and move on to harassing the mailman about the angle of his delivery. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I didn't know it yet, but Brenda wasn't just complaining anymore. She was mobilizing. That morning wasn't a skirmish. It was the opening shot of a nuclear conflict. She was about to bring the full weight of bureaucracy down on my head. The rest of the day was normal. I'm a general contractor, mostly residential remodels, kitchens, bathrooms, decks. I spent the day dealing with a drywall crew that showed up 2 hours late and a client who wanted to know if we could move a load-bearing wall because it ruined the feng shui. Standard stuff. The Mammoth did what she was born to do. Hauled lumber, towed a dump trailer, and provided a mobile office where I could eat a sandwich in peace. When I got home that evening, around 6:30 p.m., the street was quiet. Too quiet. I pulled into the driveway, the engine hot and ticking as I shut it down. I grabbed my cooler and hopped out. There was something taped to my front door. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a handwritten note from Brenda. I could handle those. Haba. Those usually said things like, "Trim your hedges," or "Your trash can lid was open 1 inch." This was an envelope. A thick, official-looking envelope taped with blue painter's tape. I walked up the steps, my boots heavy on the concrete. I ripped the envelope down. The return address didn't say Oak Creek HOA. It said City of City Name, Department of Code Enforcement. I tore it open right there on the porch. Notice of violation, case no, 45,992. Nature of complaint: emission of noxious odors, excessive noise disturbance, unlawful operation of commercial equipment in residential zone. I scanned the document. It was a laundry list. It claimed that my vehicle produced chemical fumes causing dizziness and nausea in residents and exceeded municipal decibel limits for residential tranquility. But the kicker was the second page. It was a letter from the HOA attorney. "Dear Mr. Wilson, it has come to our attention that your vehicle, a Ford F350, constitutes a nuisance to the community. Multiple residents have filed complaints regarding the toxic diesel fumes emanating from your property. The board has determined that this violates Section 4.2 of the CC and Rs regarding noxious and offensive activity. You are hereby ordered to cease and desist the parking and operation of said diesel vehicle within the community boundaries immediately. Failure to comply will result in fines of $500 per day, retroactive to the date of this notice, and potential towing of the vehicle at the owner's expense. $500 a day." I stared at the paper. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from pure, unadulterated rage. Multiple residents. Yeah, right. Brenda and who? Her cat? I looked over at Brenda's house. The blinds were shut tight, but I saw a slat move. She was watching. She wanted to see me read it. She wanted to see me crumble. She wanted me to sell the truck. She wanted me to buy a Prius, or, better yet, move away and let her live in her sterile, silent bubble. I crumpled the letter in my fist. "Oh, you want a war, Brenda?" I whispered to the empty air. "You want to talk about smells? You want to talk about chemistry?" I didn't know how I was going to do it yet. I didn't have a plan. I just had a burning ball of spite in my gut and a truck that I refused to give up. I looked at the Mammoth. She sat there, big and ugly and beautiful. They wanted to take her away because she smelled like a truck. Fine. If they didn't like the smell of diesel, I'd give them something else to smell. Manoi. I'd give them something they couldn't legislate. I'd give them something delicious. I walked into my house, tossed the keys on the counter, and opened my laptop. I didn't search for lawyers. I didn't search for homes for sale. I typed into the search bar, how to convert diesel engine to run on vegetable oil. The screen populated with results. Forums, YouTube videos, diagrams. I clicked on a video titled WVO Conversion, Free Fuel and Cleaner Emissions. I cracked a beer and sat down. The video started playing. A guy with a beard and grease-stained hands was pouring a jug of used fryer oil into a tank in the bed of a Dodge Ram. "The best part," the guy in the video said, grinning at the camera, "is that the exhaust smells like whatever was cooked in the oil. Fried chicken, donuts, French fries?" I paused the video. A slow, wicked grin spread across my face. The smell of French fries. Brenda was on a strict diet. She constantly bragged about her kale smoothies and her sugar-free existence. She treated grease like it was radioactive waste. I looked out the window at her house. "Brenda," I said, raising my beer bottle in a toast. "Dinner is served." The next morning, the war moved from paper to pavement. I took the day off work, an unpaid day, which already had my blood pressure spiking, because the letter stated a city inspector would be arriving between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. That classic service window designed to keep you trapped in your own home, like a prisoner of the state. I spent the morning pacing the living room, drinking enough coffee to kill a horse, watching Brenda's house through the slats of my blinds. She was out there, of course. She was pruning her roses, but she wasn't looking at the flowers. She was looking at the street, waiting for her champion to arrive. At 10:30 a.m., a white sedan with the city seal on the door pulled up. A man climbed out. He looked like he had been defeated by life about 15 years ago and was just running out the clock. He wore a windbreaker that was slightly too tight and carried a clipboard like a shield. I walked out to meet him before he even reached the porch. Brenda immediately dropped her gardening shears and scurried over to the edge of her property line, hovering like a vulture waiting for roadkill. "Mr. Wilson?" the man asked, not making eye contact. "That's me," I said. "I'm Dave, code enforcement. We received multiple complaints regarding—" He glanced at his clipboard, sighed, and adjusted his glasses. "What?" "Industrial noise levels and the release of toxic, noxious, and carcinogenic fumes akin to a chemical warfare agent." He looked up at me. "Quote, unquote." "It's a pickup truck, Dave," I said flatly. "That's what they all say," Dave mumbled. "I need to perform a decibel reading and an emissions assessment. Can you start the vehicle, please?" "Gladly." I climbed into the Mammoth. I saw Brenda pull out her phone again. She was practically vibrating with excitement. This was it, the moment she had been dreaming of, the death of the beast. I turned the key. The truck roared to life. Dave stood 10 feet away, holding a legitimate, calibrated decibel meter. He watched the needle jump. He waited. He moved a few steps back. He moved a few steps forward. He frowned. I rolled down the window. "Well?" Dave looked at the meter, then at Brenda. "Tom?" Then back at the meter. "It's loud," he admitted. "But at idle, it's sitting at about 82 decibels. The city ordinance for daytime noise limits in a residential zone is 85. You're under, barely. But you're under." "Ha!" I slapped the steering wheel. "Impossible!" Brenda shrieked from the sidewalk. "Your machine is broken. It shakes my windows. It terrifies the birds." "Ma'am, the machine is calibrated," Dave said, sounding like he'd had this conversation 1,000 times. "He's legal on noise. Just don't rev it past 2,000 RPM before 7 a.m., all right?" "You got it, Dave," I said. "However," Dave said, raising a finger, "we have to address the odor complaint." "It's diesel," I said. "Trucks smell like diesel, cars smell like gas. That's how combustion works." Dave walked around to the tailpipe. He sniffed. He grimaced. To be fair, the Mammoth was running a little rich that morning. The air was thick with that heavy, oily scent. "It is pungent," Dave noted, scribbling on his clipboard. "It's poison," Brenda yelled. "I feel faint. I'm getting a migraine right now. My throat is closing up." She grabbed her throat with both hands, performing a scene worthy of a daytime soap opera. Dave looked at her, then looked at me. He walked over to my window and leaned in, lowering his voice. "Look, buddy," he said, "between you and me, she's a pain in the ass. I know the type. We have a file on her thick enough to stop a bullet. She called us last week because the garbage truck was too aggressive with her bin. So you're gonna let this go? I asked, hopeful. Dave shook his head. I can't. The noise is objective. The numbers save you there. But noxious odors is a subjective code, specifically Section 11.4b. If a neighbor claims the smell is causing physical distress, nausea, dizziness, respiratory issues, and I can confirm there is a strong and persistent odor, the city has to act. She's claiming health impacts. If I sign off on this as no violation and she faints next week, she sues the city. My boss doesn't like lawsuits. My boss likes quiet. So what are you saying? I'm saying you have to mitigate the odor, Dave said. If I come back in 10 days and it still smells like a refinery out here, I have to issue the citation. And since the HOA is piggybacking on our findings, they'll hit you with the fines too. You're looking at about $1,000 a week in penalties. Mitigate the odor. I stared at him. It's an engine. Unless I swap it for a hamster wheel, it's going to make exhaust. Fix it, sell it, or park it somewhere else, Dave said, straightening up. You got 10 days, Mr. Wilson. He handed me a yellow slip of paper, tipped his imaginary hat, and walked back to his sedan. I sat there, the engine idling, the yellow slip trembling in my hand. Brenda was beaming. She didn't need to hear the conversation to know the outcome. The yellow slip was a victory flag. She gave me a little wave, a tiny finger-wiggling wave that said, I win, you lose, bye-bye, truck. I turned off the engine. The silence that followed was heavy. 10 days, I muttered. I didn't have 10 days. I had 0 patience left. I went back inside, grabbed my keys, grabbed my checkbook, and walked out the back door to my garage. I wasn't going to sell the Mammoth. I wasn't going to park it at a storage lot 3 miles away and ride a bike to it every morning like some kind of commuter peasant. I was going to turn the Mammoth into a mobile deep fryer. I spent an hour on the phone before I found the place. Most mechanics hung up on me. They wanted to do oil changes and brake pads, not Frankenstein science projects. But then I found a listing on the 3rd page of Google results. Torque and awe diesel performance. Slogan: we make it smoke, we make it broke, we fix it again. It was located in the industrial district, sandwiched between a scrapyard and a place that manufactured questionable concrete statues. I drove the Mammoth down there, ignoring the way the suspension rattled on the potholed road. The shop was a metal building that looked like it had been constructed from spare parts of other buildings. There were trucks everywhere, lifted Dodges, dismantled Fords, a semi-truck cab missing its wheels. The air smelled of grease, ozone, and loud classic rock. I pulled into the bay. A guy slid out from under a lifted Chevy on a creeper. He was huge. He looked like a Viking who had given up pillaging to focus on fuel injection. His beard had actual grease in it. His coveralls were more oil than fabric. "Help you?" he grunted, wiping his hands on a rag that was dirtier than his hands. "I'm looking for Sully," I said. "You found him." "I need to convert this 7.3 to run on vegetable oil," I said, "and I need it done fast." Sully paused. He looked at the truck, then at me. He spat on the concrete. "Veggie oil? Why? You a hippie? You trying to save the polar bears? 'Cause if you are, you're in the wrong shop, brother. We delete catalytic converters for breakfast here." "I'm not a hippie," I said. "I'm a man with a neighbor named Brenda." Sully raised an eyebrow. "Go on?" I told him the story. I told him about the decibel meter. I told him about the noxious fumes complaint. I told him about the $500 a day fines and the threat to tow my truck. I told him about the smirk she gave me when the inspector handed me the yellow slip. "She says it smells like toxic death," I explained. "So I want to make it smell like lunch. I want to drive past her house and make her stomach grow. I want to replace the smell of diesel with the smell of freedom and cholesterol." Sully stared at me for a long moment. Then a slow, gap-toothed grin spread across his face. He started to chuckle. The chuckle turned into a laugh, a deep, belly-shaking roar that echoed off the metal walls. Malicious compliance, Sully said, wiping a tear from his eye. My favorite kind of engineering. He walked over to the Mammoth and popped the hood. He leaned in, inspecting the engine bay. The 7.3 is the perfect candidate, he muttered, mostly to himself. Injectors can handle the viscosity if we get the heat right. We'll need a dual tank system. You keep the stock tank for diesel to start it up and shut it down. Gotta flush the lines so the grease doesn't congeal overnight and turn your fuel lines into candles. We mount a second tank, maybe 60 gallons, in the bed for the oil. Run coolant lines through the tank to heat the oil, another heat exchanger near the filter, and a heavy-duty lift pump. He stood up, eyes gleaming. I can install a switch on the dash. You start on diesel. Once the engine temp hits 160, you flip the switch. Valves open, diesel shuts off, hot grease flows in. Boom! You're cooking with gas. Or grease. How much? I asked. Parts and labor? It ain't cheap. The kit alone is $2,000, plus my time. You're looking at $4,000. It was a lot of money. It was my vacation fund. It was the money I was saving for a new jet ski. But then I pictured Brenda's face. I pictured her sniffing the air, expecting poison and getting poultry. Do it, I said. There's a catch, Sully said. I'm booked out 3 weeks. I don't have 3 weeks. I have 10 days before the fines start. Sully scratched his beard. I can do it this weekend, but it's gonna cost you extra for the rush, and I need the truck here. Now! Take it, I said. But we have to sell it. Sell what? The defeat, I said. Brenda is watching. If I just drive it here, she'll think I'm just hiding it. I need her to think she won. I need her to think the truck is dead. I need her to think I've given up. Sully grinned again. I got a flatbed tow truck around back. My cousin Vinny drives it. He's an actor. Well, he was an extra in a mafia movie once. We can make a scene. An hour later, I was back in my driveway with the Mammoth. I went inside and waited. At 4 p.m., right as Brenda was coming out to water her hydrangeas, the tow truck rolled up. It was a rusty, menacing-looking vehicle with Torquay and Awe Recovery painted on the side. Vinny jumped out. He wasn't big like Sully, but he was loud. He wore a neon vest and smoked a cigar that looked like it had been lit yesterday. "This the heap?" Vinny shouted, loud enough for the entire block to hear. "Yeah, that's it," I yelled back, walking out with my head hung low. "Engine's shot. City says it's gotta go. Just take it away." I saw Brenda freeze. She lowered her hose. She took a step closer, her eyes widening. "Just hook it up," I yelled, kicking the tire of my beloved truck. "It's nothing but trouble. I'm done with it. I'm gonna buy a Honda Civic." Vinny winked at me, obscured by a cloud of cigar smoke. He hooked up the chains. He dragged the Mammoth onto the flatbed. The suspension groaned. It looked tragic. It looked final. "Where you taking it?" I asked loudly. "Scrapyard," Vinny bellowed. "Gonna crush it into a cube. Maybe turn it into soda cans." "Good riddance," I shouted. I watched Brenda. A smile broke across her face. A genuine ear-to-ear grin that showed way too much gum. She actually clapped her hands. She did a little hop. She walked over to the property line. "Is it true?" she called out, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Is it finally gone?" "You win, Brenda," I said, putting my hands in my pockets and looking at the ground. "Code enforcement, the fines. I can't afford it. The engine is blown anyway. I'm sending it to the crusher." "Well," she said, straightening her robe. "It's for the best, Michael, really. It was an eyesore. And a health hazard. Now we can all breathe easier. I'm sure you'll find a nice, quiet electric vehicle that suits the neighborhood aesthetic much better." "Yeah," I mumbled. "Maybe a bicycle." "A bicycle would be lovely," she said. Vinny slammed the door of the tow truck. He revved his engine, which was also a diesel, ironically, but Brenda didn't seem to mind this one, because it was the hearse carrying away her enemy. He drove off, the Mammoth bouncing slightly on the bed, disappearing around the corner. Brenda stood there for a moment, watching it go. She took a deep breath of air, expanded her chest, and sighed contentedly. "Finally," she said. "Peace." She turned and walked back into her house. I waited until her door clicked shut. Then I turned and walked into my own house. I didn't go to the computer. I went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. The first phase was complete. The truck was in custody. The enemy was disarmed. Now came the hard part. Anuptom. Sully had said something important before I left the shop. The conversion is the easy part, kid. Finding the fuel? That's the hustle. You can't just pull up to a Shell station. You gotta hunt for the grease. You gotta be a grease pirate. I had 10 days. The truck would be in the shop for 5. That gave me 5 days to secure a supply line. I needed oil, gallons of it. And not just any oil, Sully had warned me. Don't get the creamy stuff, he'd said. Hydrogenated oils are a nightmare. You want the clear liquid gold, canola, soybean, peanut, and you gotta filter it. If you pour chunky grease into my system, you'll blow the injectors and we're back to square one. I needed a vehicle to hunt in. Since the Mammoth was crushed, I had to rent a car. I went to the rental agency the next morning and requested their cheapest van. They gave me a white minivan that smelled like stale Cheerios and regret. It was perfect. It was the ultimate camouflage. I went to the hardware store first. I bought 4 blue 55-gallon drums, a transfer pump, and a bunch of mesh strainers and cheesecloth. I set up a lab in my backyard shed. I blacked out the windows of the shed with garbage bags so Brenda couldn't see in. If she saw me refining sludge in the backyard, she'd probably call the EPA and claim I was building a meth lab or a nuclear reactor. Then, I hit the streets. My first target was Chez Maurice, a high-end French bistro downtown. My logic was simple. Fancy food, fancy oil, better smell. I pulled the minivan into the alley behind the restaurant. I saw the grease dumpster, a black, grime-coated bin labeled "Rendering Service Only." I grabbed a 5-gallon bucket and walked to the back door. A chef came out, smoking a cigarette. He wore a tall white hat and looked like he hated everyone and everything. "Excuse me," I said. "I was wondering what you guys do with your old fryer oil." The chef looked me up and down. "We pay a company to take it away." "Who are you? Health inspector?" "No, I'm a hobbyist," I said. "I'm looking for high-quality waste oil for a project. I can take it off your hands for free. Save you the pickup fee." The chef flicked his cigarette ash near my shoe. "We cook duck fat fries." "You want duck fat?" Sure." "No," he said. "Duck fat is expensive. We keep it. We have canola for the calamari, but I don't know you. You look like a cop. Get out of my alley." Strike one. Apparently, Menard. The grease game was more territorial than I thought. I drove to the suburbs. I tried a chain restaurant, a wing joint. The manager there was a teenager who looked terrified. "I can't let you take the oil, man," he whispered, looking around. "Corporate tracks it. They weigh the barrels. If I'm short on grease, they think I'm stealing it to, I don't know, drink it? I don't make the rules." Strike two. This was harder than it looked. I sat in the minivan, frustrated. I needed volume. I needed a place that fried everything. I needed a place where the oil flowed like wine. And then I saw it. The Golden Dragon Super Buffet. It was a massive building with a neon dragon on the roof. The parking lot was full. The smell wafting from the vents was heavy with soy sauce, garlic, and frying batter. I walked in. I asked to see the owner. A small, energetic man in a suit came out. "Mr. Liu?" I asked. "Yes, you have complaint? Crab rangoon too cold. I fix." "No, the food is great," I lied. I hadn't eaten there. "I have a proposition. I want your oil, your waste fryer oil, all of it." Mr. Liu's eyes narrowed. "You want my garbage oil?" "Yes. I'll pump it out myself. I'll keep your bins clean. I'll do it for free. You cancel your rendering contract. You save money." Mr. Liu pulled a calculator out of his pocket. Literally, right out of his pocket. He punched a few numbers. He looked at me. "You take all of it?" "All of it." "You come every week?" "Every week." "You make mess in my alley?" "Not a drop." Mr. Liu smiled. It was a beautiful smile. "You are my new best friend. Go back. Take all. My wife hates paying the grease man. She says he charges too much and smells like old socks. You take." I had my source. I spent the next 2 hours pumping warm, brown sludge from his grease trap into the drums in the back of the minivan. It was disgusting. It was messy. I got oil on my jeans, in my hair, on the steering wheel. But as I pumped, I smelled it. It didn't smell like waste. It smelled like General Tso's chicken. It smelled like egg rolls. It smelled like pork fried rice. It was glorious. I drove the payload back to my house. I backed the minivan up to the shed, checking for Brenda. The coast was clear. I spent the night filtering. I poured the oil through a mesh screen to catch the big chunks, burnt bits of batter, stray noodles, the occasional unidentifiable crunchy thing. Then I pumped it through a 5-micron filter, then a 1-micron filter. By 3 a.m., I had 50 gallons of amber-colored translucent fuel. It looked like apple juice. I dipped a finger in and smelled it. It was distinct. It was unmistakable. The next day I needed variety. I didn't just want Chinese food exhaust, I wanted a bouquet. I wanted a smorgasbord. I went to Barnaby's Burger Shack. It was a local dive, famous for onion rings and bacon-wrapped everything. The owner, a guy named Barnaby, obviously, was easier to deal with than the chef, but harder than Mr. Liu. "What do you want it for?" Barnaby asked, leaning over the counter. He had mustard on his shirt. "I'm building a heating system," I said. Technically true. An engine is a heat engine. "Long as you don't sue me if you blow yourself up," Barnaby said. "Out back, the blue bin. That's the good stuff. Bacon grease, fry oil, burger drippings. It's thick. You'll need a heater." "I got it covered," I said. I harvested 20 gallons of premium American grease. This stuff was heavy. When I filtered it later that night, the shed smelled so good I actually got hungry and had to order a pizza. The scent was rich, salty, and savory. It smelled like a heart attack in a bottle. By Friday, I had my stockpile. 70 gallons of fuel, 50 gallons of Chinese buffet blend, 20 gallons of Burger Shack reserve. On Saturday morning, my phone rang. "It's done," Sully said. His voice sounded tired but triumphant. "And kid, you were right. We test ran it in the shop. The guys are arguing over who gets to drive it out. It smells like a food court in here." "I'm coming," I said. I returned to the minivan, which now smelled so strongly of takeout food that the rental agent asked if I had catered a wedding in it. I took an Uber to Torque and Awe. The Mammoth was parked out front. It looked the same. Same dented bumper, same faded paint. But underneath, it was changed. Sully walked me through it. "Here's your secondary tank," he said, pointing to a diamond plate toolbox in the bed. "Hidden in plain sight. Holds 60 gallons. We ran the heated lines along the frame rail. Under the hood, you got a chaotic mess of valves, but it works. Here's your switch." He pointed to a toggle switch installed on the dashboard. It was a red switch, like something you'd use to launch a missile. He had labeled it with a label maker. Fry mode. "Start on the main tank," Sully instructed. "Watch the temp gauge. When it hits normal operating temp, flip the switch. You'll feel a little hiccup as the injectors switch over, then she'll smooth out. To shut down, you gotta flip it back to diesel for the last 5 minutes of your drive. Purge the lines. If you leave veggie oil in the injectors and it gets cold, it turns to wax. You'll be calling me for a tow, and I will laugh at you." "Got it," I said. "Purge before parking." "And here," Sully said, slapping a sticker on the back window. It was a green sticker that looked official. It said biofuel-powered clean idle compliant. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "Internet," Sully shrugged. "It ain't strictly legal, but it ain't strictly illegal either. It confuses the cops. That's all you need." I paid the man. It hurt my bank account, but looking at the truck, I felt a surge of adrenaline. "Go get him, Tiger," Sully said. I climbed in. It felt good to be back in the saddle. The seat was molded to my back. I started it up. Chug, chug, chug. The familiar diesel clatter. I drove toward home. It was Saturday evening. The sun was setting. I knew Brenda would be home. She usually sat on her porch with a glass of white wine on Saturdays, judging the traffic. I watched the temperature gauge. It climbed slowly. By the time I hit the entrance to the subdivision, the needle was dead center. My heart was pounding. This was the test. I reached out and flipped the red switch. Click. The engine stumbled for a fraction of a second. My breath caught in my throat. Don't stall, don't die. Then, the idle smoothed out. The clatter softened just a hair. Vegetable oil has higher lubricity than ultra-low sulfur diesel, so it actually quiets the injectors down. The Mammoth hummed. I rolled down the windows. At first, I smelled nothing, just the wind. Then, at a stop sign, the wind shifted. It hit me. It was warm. It was salty. It was unmistakable. It didn't smell like an engine. It didn't smell like a truck. It smelled like I was standing inside the kitchen of the Golden Dragon while someone was frying a batch of crab rangoons. I laughed. I laughed so hard I almost missed the turn onto my street. I rolled slowly down the block. I saw Mr. Henderson walking his dog. He stopped. He lifted his head. He sniffed the air. He looked around, confused. He looked at my truck, then looked at the empty air behind me, trying to locate the Phantom restaurant. I pulled up to my house. Brenda was there. She was on her porch. She was holding her wine glass. She saw the truck. She froze. The glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Her eyes bulged. She stood up, spilling a little Chardonnay on her slippers. She looked like she had seen a ghost that was supposed to be crushed into a cube. I pulled into the driveway. I didn't turn it off, I let it idle. The exhaust drifted towards her porch. It wasn't the thin, acrid gray haze of diesel anymore. It was a thicker, white vapor, and it was carrying the scent of 50 gallons of fried perfection. Brenda marched down the steps. She didn't even grab her phone this time. She was too shocked. She walked right up to the property line. "You!" she shouted. You liar! You said it was crushed. You said it was gone." "I said I was sending it to the crusher," I yelled back, leaning out the window with a grin that threatened to split my face. But I had a change of heart, Brenda. I decided to go green. "I'm saving the planet!" "It's back!" she screamed. "The noise, She stopped. She sniffed. Her nose wrinkled. She took a shallow breath, then a deeper one. Her confusion was palpable. She was expecting the sharp sting of petrochemicals. Instead, she was getting a noseful of MSG and crispy batter. "What?" She sniffed again. "What is that smell?" "That?" I said. "That is the smell of recycling, Brenda. It's 100% renewable biofuel. Vegetable oil, no toxins, no carcinogens, just dinner. It smells like grease," she said, her face contorting. "It smells like fast food." "Does it?" I asked innocently. "I think it smells like victory." "It's disgusting," she yelled, recovering her anger. "It smells like a cheap strip mall. You're making my property smell like a cafeteria." "But is it noxious?" I asked. "Is it making you dizzy? Is it chemical fumes?" "It makes me want to vomit," she declared. "It is offensive. I am calling the police. I am calling the fire department. You are burning trash. You are running an illegal kitchen. I will have you arrested." She turned and ran back into her house. I saw her frantic silhouette in the window, phone to her ear. I sat there, idling in the cloud of eau d'egg roll, and waited for the cavalry. This was going to be good. I didn't turn the engine off. I couldn't. If I shut it down now, the system would still be full of vegetable oil. Without the engine heat to keep it viscous, that oil would cool, thicken, and turn my fuel lines into arteries clogged with cholesterol. I needed to purge the lines with diesel before I parked it for the night, but I wasn't going to do that yet. I needed the show to go on. I needed the evidence to be present when the authorities arrived. So I sat on my tailgate, sipping a fresh beer, while the Mammoth idled. The rumble was steady, a deep rhythmic bass note that vibrated the asphalt. But the exhaust... Oh, the exhaust was a masterpiece. It was a thick, white plume that didn't rise and dissipate like diesel smoke. It hung low and heavy, wrapping around Brenda's pristine front porch like a culinary fog. The smell of the Golden Dragon Super Buffet was now the dominant atmospheric condition of our cul-de-sac. It was soy, ginger, garlic, and that indistinct, savory heaviness of deep-fried batter. It took 9 minutes. I timed it. Brenda must have used the magic words, fire, explosion, or active threat, because the response was disproportionate. First, a squad car came screaming around the corner, drifting slightly as it hit the turn. Then another. Then, the heavy, mournful wail of a ladder truck. Blue and red lights strobed against the houses, turning the suburban evening into a disco of emergency response. Neighbors were pouring out of their doors now. The Hendersons, the Millers from down the street, old man Jenkins with his walker. They weren't running away, though. They were walking toward the smell, noses in the air, looking confused and slightly hungry. The first squad car screeched to a halt in front of my driveway. 2 officers spilled out. One had his hand on his holster. "Police, step away from the vehicle," the lead officer shouted. He was a young guy, looked like he did CrossFit and drank too much energy drink. I stood up slowly, putting my beer on the tailgate. I raised my hands, palms open. "I'm just sitting here." "Nah. Officer, it's my truck, my property." Before the officer could assess the threat, Brenda burst out of her house. She was wearing a different robe now, a silk one. She looked like a deposed queen demanding the execution of a peasant. "Arrest him!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "He's burning toxic waste. He's running an illegal rendering plant. I can't breathe. The fumes are killing me." The second officer, an older guy with a mustache that commanded respect and a belly that suggested he knew his way around a donut shop, walked up past the rookie. His name tag read SGT, Miller. Miller stopped about 5 feet from the truck. He sniffed. He frowned. He sniffed again. He took his hat off, scratched his head, and put it back on. "Ma'am," Miller said, his voice calm and weary, "nobody is burning trash. I don't smell smoke. I smell—" He paused, looking at his partner. "Roberts, what do I smell?" Officer Roberts, the rookie, lowered his hand from his holster. He sniffed the air. "It smells like egg rolls, Sarge? Or maybe General Tso's?" "Exactly," Miller said. He turned to me. "Sir, why does your truck smell like a Chinese takeout menu?" "It's a biofuel conversion, Sergeant," I said, walking over to the hood of the truck. "It runs on waste vegetable oil. WVO, it's recycled cooking grease. It's eco-friendly, carbon neutral, cleaner than the diesel it replaced." "He's lying!" Brenda screamed. She was practically vibrating. "It's a chemical mask. He's masking the toxins with artificial scents. It's illegal. Section 4.2 ! Noxious odors. It's offensive." The fire truck pulled up, air brakes hissing. 3 firefighters jumped out in full gear, helmets, axes, the works. The captain marched over. "Where's the fire?" the captain barked. Dispatch said resident burning industrial waste in driveway. "No fire, Cap," Sergeant Miller said. "Just dinner." The fire captain lifted his visor. He took a deep breath. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Damn, is that pork fried rice?" "I believe it is," I said. "Sourced locally from the Golden Dragon." "You're running a 7.3 power stroke on fryer grease?" the captain asked, stepping closer to the truck. He sounded impressed. "I read about this. Never smelled one running, though." "Open the hood," Brenda demanded. "Inspect it. He has a bomb in there, a grease bomb." "Ma'am, please step back," Miller said. "Sir, pop the hood. Let's just clear this up." I reached in and pulled the release. I lifted the heavy hood of the Mammoth. The engine bay was a maze of hoses, but Sully had done neat work. The extra fuel lines were braided stainless steel. The heat exchangers were shiny aluminum. "Here's the setup," I explained, pointing. "This is the heated filter. This is the injection switching unit. The fuel comes from a secondary tank in the bed. It's just vegetable oil. Same stuff you cook with. Technically, if you got desperate, you could dip bread in my fuel tank and eat it." "Don't eat the fuel," the fire captain advised the rookie, who looked like he was considering it. "Is it flammable?" the captain asked me. "Flash point of vegetable oil is over 600 degrees Fahrenheit. I recited the stats Sully had given me. Diesel is around 125. It's actually safer than standard fuel, harder to ignite. The captain nodded. "No fire hazard here. Actually, it's probably safer than the gas in your lawnmower, ma'am." Brenda turned purple. "But the smell! The smell is intrusive. It enters my home. It permeates my drapes. I am on a strict no-fat diet. The smell of lipids is triggering my anxiety." Sergeant Miller pulled out a notepad. Ma'am, I understand it's strong, but smelling like food isn't a crime. It's a nuisance, she argued. It's noxious. The code says noxious. Noxious implies harmful, Miller said. Toxic, dangerous. This just smells like Saturday night. I can't cite a man for smelling like an appetizer. You have to do something, Brenda stomped her foot. He is mocking me. He did this to spite me. Miller looked at me. He had eyes that had seen domestic disputes, bar fights, and petty thefts. He knew exactly what was happening. He looked at the truck, then at Brenda, then at the for sale sign that had been on the house across the street for 6 months. Sir, Miller said to me, is the vehicle street legal? Passed inspection, I lied, sort of. Emission compliant. See the sticker? I pointed to the green sticker Sully had slapped on the back window. Biofuel-powered clean idle compliant. Miller looked at the sticker. It looked official enough. And the noise? Miller asked. It's quieter than it was on diesel, I said. The oil lubricates the injectors. Listen. We all listened. The clatter was there, but it was softer, warmer. It is quieter, the fire captain agreed. My brother has a 7.3, sounds like a bag of hammers. This sounds smooth. So, Miller said, closing his notebook. No noise violation, no fire hazard, no illegal dumping. No toxic fumes. But the smell, Brenda wailed. It's everywhere. Ma'am, Miller said, his patience finally snapping. If he was grilling burgers in his backyard, it would smell like burgers. If he was smoking a brisket, it would smell like brisket. You can't call 911 because you don't like the menu. This is a waste of city resources. You have a fire truck and 2 squad cars here for a smell complaint. But, Brenda sputtered. If you call us again for this, Miller said, his voice dropping to a warning tone, unless his truck is actively on fire or shooting actual poison gas, I'm going to have to cite you for filing a false report and misuse of the 911 system. Do we understand each other? Brenda looked at the cop. She looked at the firemen, who were now gathered around the engine bay asking me about miles per gallon. She looked at the neighbors, who were snickering. She let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. This is harassment. I will sue. I will sue the city. I will sue the manufacturer of vegetable oil. She turned and fled into her house, slamming the door so hard the glass pane rattled. Miller sighed and rubbed his temples. All right, show's over, folks. Go back to your TVs. He turned to me. A small grin crept onto his face. You really run this on fryer grease? Yes, sir. Get it free from the buffet. Does it always smell like Chinese food? Depends on the batch, I said. Next week I'm picking up 20 gallons from the Burger Shack. Should smell like bacon. Miller chuckled. Well, try to park it downwind if you can. You're making my guys hungry. We still got 4 hours on shift. Will do. Sergeant? The fire captain clapped me on the shoulder. Hell of a rig, son, hell of a rig. They packed up. The lights died down. The sirens remained silent as they rolled away. The silence returned to the street, save for the gentle, rhythmic chugging of the veggie stroke. I looked at Brenda's house. The lights were off. She was probably in the basement, wrapped in a blanket, writing a manifesto. I climbed back into the truck to purge the lines. I flipped the switch back to diesel. The engine note changed slightly, sharpening up. I let it run for 5 minutes to clear the injectors. But the smell lingered. The heavy, delicious fog of victory hung over the neighborhood. As I walked to my front door, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mr. Henderson across the street. Text. Hey, Mike. Weird question. But does your truck do delivery? I'm suddenly craving dim sum. I laughed. I walked inside, cracked another beer, and slept like a baby. The next 2 weeks were the best weeks of my life. I became a local legend. I wasn't the guy with the loud truck anymore. I was the Friar Tuck of Oak Creek. When I drove down the street, people waved. Kids on bicycles would pedal hard to catch the draft behind me, inhaling deep breaths of whatever flavor I was burning that day. I became a mobile olfactory weather system. Hey, Mike! A neighbor would yell while mowing his lawn. What's on the menu today? Barnaby's Bacon Blend, I'd shout back. rolling past in a cloud of hickory-smoked exhaust. "Smells great, keep it up!" I refined my blends. I learned that mixing 20% donut shop oil with 80% savory grease created a sweet and sour exhaust note that was particularly pleasant on crisp mornings. I learned that seafood place oil was a bad idea. That day, I admit, was a mistake. It smelled like a low tide, and even I had to apologize to the mailman. But mostly, I just drove. I drove to work. I drove to the store. I drove laps around the neighborhood just because I could. Brenda, on the other hand, began to unravel. She couldn't call the cops. She couldn't call the HOA. I had attended the next meeting and brought a tray of donuts. The board voted unanimously that food smells were not a violation of community standards. She tried to fight fire with fire. She bought industrial air purifiers and set them up on her porch, creating a wall of white noise that was actually louder than my truck. She planted mint and lavender bushes along the property line, but they were no match for the overpowering aroma of 50 gallons of heated soybean oil. One Saturday, about 3 weeks after the police incident, I was out washing the Mammoth. I was scrubbing the EPA sticker to keep it shiny. A realtor's car pulled up next door. I stopped scrubbing. I watched. The realtor, a woman in a sharp blazer, walked up to Brenda's door. Brenda came out. They shook hands. The realtor hammered a sign into the lawn. "For sale." My heart soared. It fluttered in my chest like a bird released from a cage. Brenda walked down the driveway with the realtor. She saw me. She stopped. She looked tired. Her hair wasn't as perfectly coiffed as usual. She looked like a general who had lost the war and was retreating to an island exile. "You win," she said. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was just flat. "I didn't want to win, Brenda," I said, leaning on my sponge. "I just wanted to drive my truck." "It's not just the truck," she said, waving a hand at the air. "It's the gluttony of it. Every time you leave, I get hungry. I gained 5 pounds this month, Michael. 5 pounds! I find myself craving fried shrimp at 7 a.m. I can't live like this. It's a sensory assault on my willpower." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, trying hard not to smile. "Where are you moving?" "Arizona," she said. "The desert, where the air is dry and the only thing you smell is dust, and where trucks are banned in the retirement community." "Sounds peaceful," I said. "It will be," she said. She looked at the Mammoth one last time. She sniffed. "Is that onion rings?" "It is," I confirmed. "Fresh batch." She sighed, a sound of profound defeat mixed with longing. "God help me." She turned and walked back inside. 2 months later, Brenda was gone. The moving truck that came to take her stuff was a diesel, and I made sure to park next to it and idle while they loaded her antique furniture, just to give her a proper send-off. The new neighbors are a young couple. They have a baby and a golden retriever. The first time I met the husband, I was starting the truck in the morning. He walked over, coffee in hand. "Hey, I'm Dan," he said. "Moved in next door." "Mike," I said, shaking his hand. "Sorry about the noise. She's a little loud in the morning." "The noise?" Dan laughed. "I don't mind the noise. I grew up on a farm. But man, I gotta ask, why does it smell like the state fair out here?" "Long story," I said, grinning. "It's run on vegetable oil." Dan's eyes lit up. "No way, that's awesome. Does it save money?" "Saves a fortune," I said, "and it keeps the neighborhood hungry." "Well," Dan said, taking a sniff. "Smells like French fries?" "Yeah," I said, climbing into the cab. "Brenda hated it, but I think it smells like freedom." I put the Mammoth in gear. I gave Dan a wave. I pulled out onto the street, the turbo whistling, the exhaust puffing that thick, white, savory cloud. I headed towards the highway. I needed to fill up. Mr. Liu at the Golden Dragon had texted me that he had a fresh barrel ready, mostly from the spring roll fryer. It was going to be a good week. I rolled down the window, cranked up the radio, and let the scent of deep-fried victory trail behind me for miles.